You know, have you ever just completely, totally misjudged someone? It turns out we all have this huge blind spot when it comes to figuring out why people do the things they do. And today we're going to dig right into that very idea, looking at the incredible work of social psychologist Lee Ross in The Person and the Situation. It's a question we ask ourselves all the time, right? Why on earth did they do that? And our brain just rushes to an answer, and usually that answer is about their character. But what if that snap judgment, that first gut reaction, is almost always missing the real story?
I mean, think about this classic example. Some car just swerves right in front of you on the highway. Your instant reaction? What a jerk! What a reckless driver! We immediately label the person, but we almost never stop to consider the situation that we can't see. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital. And this is the exact conflict we're exploring. Our default mode is to judge character while being completely blind to context.
And that right there is the heart of it all. What social psychology shows us is that we have this incredibly powerful, almost automatic bias in how we think. We just default to blaming someone's personality for what they did, when the real cause is often the hidden pressure of the situation they're caught in.
So, just how powerful can a situation be? Well, get ready, because we're about to look at some of the most famous and frankly shocking experiments in the history of psychology. And I gotta tell you, the results don't just change how you see the world, they might just change how you see yourself. First up is a study that just sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Stanley Milgram's experiment on obedience. He wanted to understand a really unsettling question. How far would ordinary people go just because someone in charge told them to?
So the setup seemed pretty straightforward. You have a volunteer, the teacher, who asks questions to a learner. Every time the learner gets one wrong, an authority figure, this guy in a lab coat, tells the teacher to deliver an electric shock. And with every mistake, the voltage goes up. Now here's the crucial twist. The learner was just an actor, and the shocks weren't real at all. But the teacher didn't know that.
The results? They were just horrifying. A huge majority of regular, everyday people kept on administering what they believed were dangerously painful, even lethal electric shocks. Their own moral compass, their own sense of right and wrong, was completely overwritten by one simple situational factor: a guy in a lab coat telling them to please continue.
But okay, maybe that was a special case, right? Maybe that was just about obeying a direct order. What happens when the situation is less about a command and more about a role you're asked to play? Well, that brings us to another landmark study, Phillips and Bardo's Stanford prison experiment.
They took perfectly normal, psychologically healthy college students and randomly assigned them to be either a prisoner or a guard in a mock prison. Within just a few days, the students playing guards became cruel and abusive, and the prisoners, they broke down, becoming passive and distressed. The situation got so toxic, so dangerous, they had to shut the whole experiment down after only 6 days. So when you look at these two classic studies, the takeaway is just undeniable. The circumstances we're in, the roles we're assigned, the authority we're facing can totally transform our behavior, and sometimes for the absolute worse. This mental blind spot, this deep-seated instinct to point the finger at the person and completely ignore the situation, well, it actually has a name, and it's a thinking error that all of us make probably every single day. It's called the fundamental attribution error, and it's basically our brain's default setting. We see someone act, and we immediately think it's a direct window into their soul, their personality, who they are, while massively downplaying all the external pressures that might be pushing them.
But how can we be so sure this bias is real? Well, psychologists came up with a really clever experiment to put it to the test, and it all revolved around essays about Fidel Castro.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating. People were asked to read essays that were either for or against Castro. Now get this. Even when the readers were explicitly told that the writers had been forced to take that position and had zero choice in the matter, they still believed the essays reflected what the writers truly thought. They just couldn't seem to ignore the person, even when the situation was staring them right in the face. When it comes right down to it, our brains are just wired for shortcuts. It's so much easier to see an action and link it directly to someone's character than it is to do the hard work of imagining all the invisible situational forces that might actually be the real cause. Okay, so we've established we have this major bias. It's a problem. So what do we do about it? How do we get past this mental glitch and start to build a more accurate, a more complete picture of why people do what they do?
Well, the brilliant social psychologist Kurt Lewin gave us a simple but really profound formula to help. B equals F of P comma E. It just means that behavior is a function of the person times their environment. It's never just one or the other. True understanding only comes when you see how the two work together.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory for a textbook. Grasping the power of the situation has massive, real-world consequences for how we design our workplaces, our schools, our entire society. So why is this so important?
The applications are absolutely everywhere. So in the workplace, instead of asking, why is this employee so lazy, we can start asking, is our system creating burnout? In schools, instead of labeling a kid as a bad student, we can ask if the classroom environment is failing them. From public health to social policy, sometimes the best way to change behavior isn't to try to fix the person, but to fix the situation they're in.
Now, it's really crucial to make this clear. This is not about letting people off the hook or excusing bad behavior. Not at all. It's about shifting our perspective from a simple, often unfair lens of blame to a much more sophisticated lens of understanding. It just gives us a fuller, more complete picture of the forces that shape all of us.
So I'll leave you with a question, a little challenge. The next time you see someone act in a way that just baffles you, is your first instinct going to be to judge their character? Or will you pause for a second and ask yourself, what's the situation here that I might not be seeing?